guys. I want to talk today about the Canadian election. And as a church official, I can't speak because the government has decided to define the church, and we have to accept their definition rather than God's definition. There's something wrong with that. From the pulpit, we ought to be able to speak regarding an election and name names and prove things by the scriptures, whether they are right or whether they're wrong. And there are some candidates that actually have evil platforms, and we should be able to call them out for it. And the government has decided in its wisdom that we must bow before Caesar and not God. That government is the demander of our final worship and our final say-so. And this is an evil in our society, and I will speak truth to power. They have no right to do this. They cannot define the church. God defined it. And so it's a violation of my faith for them to step in and to make this regulation. Of course, what they do is they say, well, you have a right to speak as a private citizen. So I'm doing that. I'm not identifying my church, although I'm active in it. And I'm an elder, a teaching elder in the congregation that I have. But I'm not here in that official capacity. I'm here to speak truth to power, regardless of consequence, and of course, not identifying the church that I'm associated with, because I don't really care for their limitations or their definitions. It's the same thing that's true of them deciding whether a church can remain open, or that I should be able to worship God in my own way and keep it very private. Don't spread it. Don't be a multiplier like God made the rest of the world to be. Multiplication is God's thing, but you shouldn't be doing that, especially not in a time when a pandemic could spread. You shouldn't be taking care of each other. You shouldn't be praying for the sick and laying hands on the sick. You have to stay away from the sick. Oh, there are so many things that the government has decided to redefine the church so that we are not effective, and then they can call us non-essential. And in truth, the essential part of the church is that without us, they will not be able to put a lid on what they're calling the pandemic. And I say that with great understanding of the situation. I've studied very hard on these things, and I have some questions, and we'll get to that in other videos, because today I want to talk about the election and the pragmatism of Christians that is a false sense of right and wrong. So let's call some things the way they are. I don't need to talk about specific names in this video. As a matter of fact, it would be rather fruitless to do that, because the video is going out to the world. And the specific individuals don't matter, but there are some principles by which we can know whether God is pleased with our choice or not. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, I can't vote my conscience, because if I vote my conscience, the other guy might win. It's like, I'll split the vote. I'll do all kinds of things. Well, let me put a couple of things to rest. Number one is God is not too concerned about the name of the person in the highest office of the land. He says that he sets up kings and tears them down, and so he can manipulate it any way he wants to, and he doesn't count on my vote to do it. He's not asking for everybody to agree with him. God says he'll manipulate it. And so here's what happens. We have the clear case of Donald Trump triumphing in the United States because God intervened. He was not supposed to win. Nobody thought he had a chance. Yet I see so many Canadians on their election deciding that we got to vote for the guy who has a chance. Since when? We have to vote the right thing to do, not the guy we think is going to win. It's not up to us to make that decision. If we vote our conscience, if we vote the real truth of the platform that the guy, first of all, is saying, second of all, whether the guy is trustworthy or not, whether or not the guy has ever told us a lie, or whether his habit is to be honest. These are things that are the important things to decide in our election. First, the platform. What is he saying? Is it right or is it wrong? And if we vote wrong, don't expect God to save us. If, on the other hand, we're voting for the guy who has the right platform, okay, or the best platform, not even the right one, because we're not always given that choice. But to be able to stand before God, if I were to die the day after the election, and to say, I voted the way you told me to vote, as opposed to I voted based on the politics of the moment and who I thought would win and who I thought would not win, nothing will ever change unless we obey God. Jeremiah 18 speaks of this in very particular terms. It says that God gave people instruction, and they said, there's no hope. Nothing will change. Therefore, we will do what we want. As a result, God's judgment comes upon the nation because they did not believe that God ran the results. So it's not about you, and it's not about your choice, and it's not about, oh, well, we diluted the vote, therefore the wrong guy got in. Here's the truth. If enough of the right guys get in, the wrong guys who actually may run the place have to deal with the number of people who got in, who are on the right side of the issue, and they're going to have to move in the right direction. And so there's a false idea here. You see, once upon a time in Canada, the NDP split a part of the far left vote away from the Liberals. Well, now there are two well-established parties, and to rule in any kind of minority government, the Liberals have to deal with an NDP wish list. They have to deal with some demands from that side of the aisle, and so as a result, the drift goes hard left. The drift is not, no matter how centrist we think we are in voting, that's not what happens. It's a compromise that happens. And today, we have the potential to do that again, only on the other side of the aisle, to the far right. There's another new far right party because the centrist conservatives are no longer centrist. They've drifted along with the rest of the country hard left. And so why do we want, if we don't want Trudeau, why do we want a Trudeau 2.0? Why do we want a conservative in name only to take over and be the tyrant? The only thing we're doing is changing the face of tyranny. And that's not good. And so if enough people on the further right parties, there are several of them, but if the only people, if they can provide enough problems to take away the majority from either party, but they become a significant voting bloc, you're going to see the country move in the other direction. But until we believe in the possibility of God's direction and the fact that our vote, as important as it is not the most important thing, but to deal with the vote as God directs us. And if we're not approaching this in prayer, asking God, what should I do? And I'm not telling you what party to go for. I'm saying, look, here's the point, okay? If the guy is saying a platform that's in line with what God allows, okay, that's checkbox one. Number two, is the guy honest or is he lying to you? You should know. The character matters. There are people who want in just because they believe you're sick of the status quo and want to change. And they will promote that they're not the same guy. But if they have the same platform or the same ideology or nothing is changing in a godly direction, we are failing the country by voting in that direction. Even if we lose, to lose and to trust God, to change the hearts of the people who get in. See, it's not about what they're like when they get in even. They have about 4 years, if God tarries and allows things to go normal, they have about 4 years to prove themselves in one direction or another. And in that 4 years, God is capable of working on their hearts. So we can put somebody in, and by the end of their term, they could be a completely different person. So we vote as God instructs us to vote, not as the world says, oh, I'm campaigning for so-and-so, and he's going to be this and he's going to be that. He's not going to be anything you know. He's going to be manipulated by forces beyond his control. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal. They're not the voting machine. But they are. Our job is to do as God instructs with those kinds of situations. Love ya. I'll talk to you in the next video.